What is REST API? REST API is a web service that uses HTTP requests to access and manipulate data using standard methods like GET, POST, PUT, and DELETE. What is the difference between SQL and NoSQL databases? SQL databases are relational and use structured query language, while NoSQL databases are non-relational and are better for handling unstructured data. Explain the concept of MVC architecture. MVC stands for Model View Controller. It separates an application into three interconnected components, promoting organized code and modularity. What is a web server, and can you name some popular ones? A web server is a software that delivers web pages to clients over the internet. Popular web servers include Apache, Nginx, and Microsoft IIS. How do you handle security vulnerabilities in your applications? I handle security by implementing strong authentication, validating user inputs, encrypting sensitive data, and conducting regular security audits. What is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous programming? Synchronous programming executes tasks sequentially, blocking further execution until the task completes, while asynchronous programming allows tasks to run independently without blocking. What is a middleware in backend development? Middleware is a function that processes requests between a client and a server, handling things like authentication, logging, or routing. Can you explain what load balancing is? Load balancing is a technique to distribute incoming network traffic across multiple servers to ensure no single server is overwhelmed. What is caching, and why is it important? Caching is storing copies of files or data in a temporary storage location to reduce loading times and server load. It improves application performance. What are WebSockets, and when would you use them? WebSockets provide a persistent connection between the client and the server, allowing for real-time communication. They are ideal for chat applications. What is CRUD? CRUD stands for Create, Read, Update, and Delete. These are the four basic operations for managing data in an application. How do you optimize database performance? I optimize database performance by indexing, normalizing data, using efficient queries, and implementing caching strategies. What is a microservice architecture? Microservice architecture is a design pattern where an application is built as a collection of small, independent services that communicate through APIs. What is the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? HTTP is an unsecured protocol for transferring data, while HTTPS is a secure version that encrypts data with SSL/TLS certificates. What do you understand by the term API rate limiting? API rate limiting controls the number of requests a client can make to an API within a certain timeframe to prevent abuse and overloading. How do you handle error handling in back-end applications? I implement centralized error handling, using try-catch blocks for known errors and logging unknown errors for troubleshooting. What is OAuth, and how does it work? OAuth is an open standard for access delegation, allowing users to grant third-party access to their resources without exposing credentials. What are some common HTTP status codes you should know? Common HTTP status codes include 200 OK, 404 not found, 500 internal server error, and 403 forbidden. What is a session, and how is it different from a cookie? A session is a server-side storage of user data, while a cookie is a client-side file stored in the browser for tracking purposes. What is the role of middleware in Express.js? Middleware in Express.js functions as a layer that processes requests and responses, handling tasks like authentication, error handling, and logging. What is dependency injection, and why is it important? Dependency injection is a design pattern that allows objects to be provided with their dependencies externally. It improves code modularity and testing. What is JWT, and how is it used in authentication? JWT JSON Web Token is a token used for securely transmitting information between parties. In authentication, it is often used to verify user identity. Explain the concept of lazy loading. Lazy loading is a technique where content is loaded only when needed, reducing the initial load time of an application. What is the solid principle in programming? The solid principle is a set of 5 design guidelines: single responsibility, open, closed, Liskov substitution, interface segregation, dependency inversion for writing cleaner code. How do you prevent SQL injection attacks? I prevent SQL injection by using prepared statements, parameterized queries, and ORM libraries to avoid directly embedding user input in SQL queries. What is the difference between a monolithic and a microservices architecture? A monolithic architecture is a single, unified application, while a microservices architecture consists of small, independent services that communicate with each other. What is serverless architecture? Serverless architecture allows developers to build and deploy applications without managing servers, using cloud services like AWS Lambda or Azure Functions. Explain the concept of database indexing. Database indexing is a data structure technique that improves the speed of data retrieval operations on a database by creating indexes on columns. What is a race condition, and how do you prevent it? A race condition occurs when 2 or more processes access shared data concurrently, leading to inconsistent results. It can be prevented using locks or synchronization. How do you scale a back-end application? I scale a back-end application by load balancing, database replication, caching, using CDNs, and implementing microservices. What is a token-based authentication? Token-based authentication is a security process where a server generates a token after user login, which the client uses for subsequent requests. What is middleware, and why is it used in back-end frameworks? Middleware is code that runs between the request and response cycle, handling things like authentication, logging, and data parsing. What is the purpose of using Docker in back-end development? Docker allows developers to create, deploy, and run applications in isolated containers, ensuring consistency across different environments. What is an ORM, and why is it useful? An ORM object relational mapping is a tool that converts data between incompatible systems using object-oriented programming, simplifying database operations. How do you manage database migrations in a back-end application? I manage database migrations using tools like Flyway or Liquibase, or migration frameworks like Django's ORM or Rails Active Record. What are the HTTP methods, and when do you use them? HTTP methods include get retrieve data, post send data, put update data, delete remove data, and patch modify data. What is horizontal scaling in back-end systems? Horizontal scaling involves adding more machines or nodes to handle increased load, distributing processing power evenly. What are webhooks, and when would you use them? Webhooks are HTTP callbacks triggered by events, sending data to another system. They are useful for real-time updates between systems. What is a database transaction, and why is it important? A database transaction is a sequence of operations treated as a single unit of work, ensuring data integrity even in case of failure. What is the difference between scaling up and scaling out? Scaling up involves adding more resources to a single server, while scaling out means adding more servers to distribute the load. What is Redis, and how is it used in a back-end application? Redis is an in-memory data structure store used as a database, cache, and message broker. It's often used for caching data to speed up response times. What is CORS, and why is it important? CORS cross-origin resource sharing is a security feature that allows or restricts resources on a web page to be requested from another domain. It prevents unauthorized access. What is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous operations? Synchronous operations block the execution until they complete, while asynchronous operations allow the program to continue running while waiting for the task to finish. What are microservices, and how do they differ from a monolithic architecture? Microservices are a collection of small, independently deployable services, while a monolithic architecture is a single, unified application. What is OAuth, and how does it work? OAuth is an open standard for access delegation, commonly used for token-based authentication. It allows third-party services to access resources without exposing user credentials. What is GraphQL, and how does it differ from REST? GraphQL is a query language for APIs that allows clients to request exactly the data they need. Unlike REST, it uses a single endpoint and is more flexible in fetching data. How do you implement pagination in a backend API? I implement pagination by using limit and offset parameters in SQL queries or by leveraging cursor-based pagination for more efficient data handling. What is a NoSQL database, and when would you use it over SQL? A NoSQL database is a non-relational database optimized for large-scale data storage. It's suitable for unstructured or rapidly changing data. What is API rate limiting, and why is it necessary? API rate limiting controls the number of API requests a client can make in a given timeframe, preventing server overload and ensuring fair usage. What is a RESTful API, and what are its main principles? A RESTful API is an API that adheres to the principles of REST representational state transfer, including statelessness, client-server separation, and a uniform interface.